Energy with naturopath and medical intuitive Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theories that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swing of a pendulum to the waves in the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. In the same way, things such as rocks and minerals vibrate very slowly and at speeds that are imperceptible to us. Living things such as plants, animals, and man vibrate faster and appear to be alive. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is if we take everything in our own universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita as she explores questions such as, what are we made of? Why do we get sick? How can I live a more balanced and whole life? Call in and talk to her and her thought-provoking guests. Send us your questions and get the help you need to move beyond any obstacle or challenges that may be affecting your life, right from the source. So stay tuned and explore your possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for tuning into the show today. Today, oh my God, excellent lineup, as I'm sure you know, because you probably are here because of it. In the first hour, we're going to be speaking to James Redfield about his new book, The 12th Insight, and also be catching up on some information about the whole Celestine Prophecy and that series. And in the second hour, we're going to be speaking with my good friend and very smart psychic guy, Michael Tamura, talking about making the leaps to knowing your own truth. Just Energy Radio is brought to you by SoulHealer.com and the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's AppliedEnergeticsInstitute.com, where you can become a energy medicine practitioner, intuitive counselor, or medical intuitive, all from the comfort of your own home. So please do go check out those sites. Also, to keep informed of our upcoming shows, visit www.justenergyradio.com and sign up for our newsletter. Also at justenergyradio.com, you can access our over 4 years of excellent programming like the shows you're going to hear today. With that said, let me introduce James and get him on the air because too many questions, always too many questions. James Redfield was 43 when he published the Celestine Prophecy. He has been keenly interested in human spirituality all of his life. From an early age, he was motivated by the need for clarity about spiritual matters. Brought up in a Methodist church that was loving and community-oriented, he was nevertheless frustrated by a lack of answers to his questions about the true nature of spiritual experience. As a young man, he studied Eastern philosophies, including Taoism and Zen, while majoring in sociology at Auburn University. Okay, James, I'm getting a lot of static. Can you hear me, James?
Yeah, I can't hear anything.
Oh, there you are.
Sounds good.
Made me a little technology nervous there. So let me just say my last sentence. So from CelestineVision.com, the author of the new book, The 12th Insight, James Redfield. Hi, James.
Hello. Glad to be with you.
Thanks for coming on the show. I have to tell you, the last few weeks we have been kind of fraught with technical difficulties, and so hearing static just made me be a little bit nervous. But we're good now.
Well, that's
I hear you perfect.
You know, Mercury's in retrograde, or about to be in retrograde, actually. Not quite yet, but it's stationary, which means, electronic things act really weird. Everything electronic and communication between people, actually, about new information can be difficult during Mercury in retrograde. That's why everybody looks like they're sort of in their own world during those periods. So it's interesting.
I have just learned that when I do this show, I only push the minimal buttons that I need to touch, and I try not to mess with things because I'll share a quick story, which is totally off topic. I've interviewed people that talk about ghosts. I mean, I've written a book about ghosts myself, and whenever I have someone that comes on and talks about spirit, the computers go crazy. by themselves. I mean, they drop calls. I've had my volume go up and down and just really weird stuff. So I've just learned I just love on my computers and my phone, and it's all good. Send out the love.
Well, that's getting in that space is the best place to be when things are acting strange.
I hear that. Let's start here. You know, your new book, The 12th Insight, is actually a book in a series of books. Why did you first even start the series that started with the Celestine Prophecy?
Well, I was a therapist at the time and very involved in what we now look back to think of as the human potential movement, which was the first sort of awakening that happened in academia, in which sociology, psychology, even modern physics started to look at the potential of the human mind that had not really been taken seriously before in science. So I was a part of that, and and I was, have a degree in sociology, which meant I really liked to see what people were interested in, what was going on, what the polls say about people's attitudes. And it became very clear in the beginning of the 90s that there was a real renaissance happening. And it was not just informational. It was also about the inner life that people reported, their interest in spirituality, they're interested in growth and the experience of growth as they felt that in their own consciousness. So I really thought there was something going on, and my first book, The Celestine Prophecy, was an attempt to describe that by talking about insights that were happening to all of us at the same time in the early 90s and into the mid-90s. And so what happened was, I took that information, turned it into a story based on my experience and other people's experiences. And that became the Celestine Prophecy. And, of course, what happened was that people, not just in the U.S., but all over the world, I think, saw that I was pointing to something that was real for them in their lives, and they started to pass that book around. And it was, in 30 countries very quickly, just because people are passing it around. So it's since then, my what I've observed is that we're still having insights into what life's about, what the deeper spiritual life is about, and that's continued. And I wrote a book about what I call the 10th insight, and that's really that was the later 90s when we were all interested in near-death experiences and reports from the afterlife, and the whole idea that psychic phenomena and ghosts and visitations by departed loved ones, and all those things sort of came into the public conversation in a real way as never before. That was the 10th insight. The 11th insight was about when we first discovered that prayer was real. I mean, it was something that was a force. Science started to really look and research at how prayer worked and that it did work. And we also discovered the law of attraction. Mental attitude had something to do with how well your life went. And we knew there was we were left there, and that was happening, in the mid-2000s when Secret came out and What to Believe and all those things. That was a great aha by the culture. And since then, though, I felt like there were missing parts of this. How do we live the better life? How do we really break through? And what was missing, I believe, and have now put in what I'm calling the 12th insight, is that we are finally integrating all this information that we've known mentally into living our lives in a more grounded, different way. And in other words, we're finally putting it all together, finally reaching clarity about how to live a greater spiritual life in a practical way every day. And that's what the 12th Insight book's about. It's about what I believe is happening out there to all of us pretty much at the same time.
I think that concept is interesting. When I work with my clients, I do counseling work myself, I'll talk to them. It's like, well, I feel like I do intuitive counseling, like that you've made a decision, and this is where you are in your process, and it really is much later in our own personal process that we get to the point of integration. I guess what I'm hearing you say is that all of us, have actually moved forward enough in our own inner processes to get to the point of integration.
And we're starting to, the whole idea of integration is that we're doing it ourselves, which means it's real to us in everyday life, and that's the big sea change. It's not just something we talk about in moments, over coffee or on Sunday. This is something that affects our lives every day, and it's what it feels like is a clarity. It feels like a clarity that begins to grow through a series of integrations as we fine-tune the way we operate in life. So the 12th Insight book is really my attempt to describe what's already happening out there and put it into terms where hopefully it will help people put it into action more quickly in their own individual lives.
I do have to share with you that I feel the Celestine Prophecy, when it came out, energized, and I'm going to say a generation of people where it opened them up to possibilities. Myself, I had been doing this kind of work for a very long time, but there was a whole big group of people that really didn't know where they fit in, and they had this stuff happening to them, but as in your bio, the church really didn't answer it. They couldn't explain, well, this is what's going on, and I felt like your book really spoke to them in real terms, not in a self-helpy kind of way, but in this was my experience, and this is the outcome of the experience, and I thought that it really helped open people up and become more aware of things like synchronicities that were happening in their lives.
Yeah, and I think that's something we were all doing pretty much at the same time. That's why it became a pass-along book. But even then, there was this sense of, a great synchronicity would happen, and people would say, oh, wow, that was a great synchronicity. Haven't had one of those in a long time. Well, the idea now is to be able to say, I have a constant flow of synchronicity in my life, mysterious coincidences that open up doors of opportunity for me. I'm lucky in the old sense of the word. I figured out karma. And this, there's steps that we can discuss that I think that we're learning as we put this into action in our own lives. And one is it all begins in terms of really integrating when we begin to tell the absolute truth as best that we can know it, the best that we know it to other people, but especially to ourselves. As you as a counselor know that, some of the big secrets we have are the ones the ego keeps, from us. We don't want to let certain information about who we are and how we act into full consciousness. And, it's a big, all that human potential stuff in psychology was about learning to admit our bad habits and learning to, move into better habits in terms of how we conduct our daily lives, and to move past our distractions. We all have a distraction. When we get under stress, we go eat chocolate, or we go shopping, or we watch more football, or we try to get ourselves in a nice place by getting busy somehow. And what those are organized distractions, and some of them are very healthy coping devices as long as we don't use those as a substitute, and a very poor one. They don't work for the euphoria of the spiritual life, of full consciousness in the world, this authentic self that can come out and be excited about every moment. That's what people intuit that we're on the verge of discovering. Every one of us out there. If you talk to anybody, they all have, it's something. I feel like it's something I need to be doing. And it's the urge that I believe is the 12th insight. And by the way, it's the same phenomenon that the Mayan calendar, I believe, has been pointing to for this time period. So it's very, very interesting that we're all doing this pretty much at the same time, and we're figuring out if we tell the truth, move from inauthenticity, because, look, the culture is totally corrupt. It's falling apart all around us. But there's a wave. There is a wave of genuine spiritual openness that runs counter to what the rest of the world is doing. So it's, as what we're doing in the 12th insight is we're coming to a place of the spiritual alternative to this deceptive world that we find going on all around us, where nobody tells the truth. At least they don't tell the whole truth. And moving to a place where we're very, very, we move into authenticity. Now, here's what that does for you. And I always say, and I say it in the book, that you can prove this to yourself. This is something that's so concrete and so available right now and works so well. We can prove it very quickly to ourselves that if we just catch ourselves whenever we shade the truth in any way, whether to make ourselves look good or to make ourselves appear smarter or to, get that sale in on Friday afternoon by saying whatever we have to say to the client to get that sale. Any deception like that limits our consciousness, but the truth opens up our consciousness. And what we're discovering is that, if we stay in integrity and in truthfulness, both especially to ourselves, again, we have to, the ego doesn't want to admit things. We have to admit everything to ourselves. We have to be able to reveal all our secrets to other people in conversation. We have to do all that. But listen, let me tell you, that's one of the biggest movements happening out there is the authenticity movement. People are discovering in hordes what the truth will do for you, both psychologically but mostly spiritually, in terms of getting the world to work for you for a change instead of against you.
I think the activities that have been going on, like in the government and around the world, all of that negative stuff and all of the pressures and challenges that people have had to withstand, especially in the last 3 or 4 years, has made people be internally fearless. And so if I have to tell you, I don't think so, they're not as scared anymore. They're not worried about what are you going to think of me, because it's like I got my own problems.
That's exactly right. So we're all moving, and you're right. It's out of necessity, because let me tell you, the world is changing so quickly, and the level of deception out there coming from government. You think they're telling the truth about the levels of radiation that are happening in Japan? They're not. You know why? They don't want to panic people, so they rationalize that means they don't have to tell them the truth. And it's at every level of government. It's at every level of business. People are trying to get by through deception, and look where it's brought the world. The environment is on the brink of a total breakdown. The medical establishment is so drug-oriented that they now have to hide side effects in terms of the research to get any drug approved. The impact of I believe the impact of inoculations has stolen 20 or 30 intelligence points from a whole generation of children. There's just corruption at every level, and I don't want to be pessimistic about that. I'm not. I'm just saying there's now an alternative, and we're learning to get centered spiritually, and to get into a place again where we understand how karma works, and we turn that process around so that what happens is if we're, and here's just a nutshell, I'll just say what it is that we're discovering, I believe, and that is, one, if you act in truth, full disclosure, then we become a synchronicity for other people. They learn something from our true history and our biography and all our talents. Everything that comes out when you tell the truth. We become synchronicities for other people. Therefore, we're telling the truth in a way that we want to be helpful to others. Now, what that does, the universe spiritually is designed so that if we do that, what happens is that we elicit a response from the universe where we draw into our lives the same kind of people who are telling us the truth and are doing that to be helpful. So we consciously begin to want to be a synchronicity for other people in conversation. They want to provide synchronicities to us. That's who we draw in. So what happens? Our lives go better. Suddenly, people show up just at the right time to give us just the right information or help or service to solve a problem, to open up a dream, to give us, just the missing piece of what we needed.
There's a lot of people that hear this talk, and I'm going to kind of put it on the skeptic's head out there, that say, but bad things happen to me, and I'm putting out all this good energy, and I'm telling my truth, and I'm saying my affirmations, but bad things still happen to me. How come? What do you say to people that have those concerns?
Well, in the book, I deal with that question, and some things happen to people because everything is not a synchronicity. Some things are just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. So this is your car that gets stolen. The guy pulled out in front of you and wrecks your car. Some of that is just that the world is imperfect. And one of the things that we're understanding right now is that we are protected intuitively. Premonitions are real. Dr. Larry Dossey has just done a great summary on the research about premonition. All the people that had premonitions at 9/11, premonitions about every tsunami, people had premonitions at the left. I mean, it's all being documented now. So in many ways, we get premonitions. We're just learning to get into a place where we can really hear these intuitive thoughts that are there to guide us out of a situation. We don't do something. We do something else more positive instead. That some things happen just because the world is imperfect, but we have protection that we're learning to open up to. But if lots of bad things are happening, and it seems like nothing is working out, then there's too little giving and too much taking. In other words, if we're trying to get energy from people, if we're trying to get money from people, if we're desperately trying to get attention from people, what we do is draw into our lives people who act just like that. If we're any way manipulative, it can be manipulated, not stealing, but manipulation to just get someone to do something we think they should do, and we want them to do it. What happens is we get manipulated. So, I'll just tell you, and offer this. I'm the biggest skeptic in the world, and I don't write books until I realize something is working out there, not just for me, but for a lot of other people. And this authenticity movement is something, again, that if things are not going well, then the first thing you do is notice what kind of people are coming into your lives, and then you ask, how am I like that? And then you start to clean up that part of your life, and you become focused on loving service, giving instead of getting. And as soon as we do that, the world begins to open up, and we draw into our lives people who are like that. And that's what we want. That's one of the things we're learning. And listen, it's not difficult to understand. Everybody listening to this right now understands exactly what I'm talking about. They just haven't gotten the clarity of mind to catch themselves when they're not telling the whole and complete truth. And every minute, and I'm talking about every small little white lie has to be, we have to get rid of. Find a way lovingly to tell the truth to people about what you're really feeling about what they're saying, how your life experience suggests there's a better way. Those are the power truths that open up the world for us.
And I think there are a lot of people that are receiving insights and guidance or experiencing synchronicities, but they're not paying attention to them at all. Or they kind of are, but they don't trust it, and they're not letting those things guide their lives. They're still trying to be in control of the direction they're going, as opposed to allowing, I'm going to say, the universe move them forward.
I had a teacher one time that told me, he said, "Look, James," he says, "your life is none of your business. It's you have to find that place inside yourself that opens up to guidance. And intuition is there to guide you. It's a spiritual helping hand that's inside you. But you can't be in your ego and worried about who's doing what to you and hear those. You can't hear it because the ego is chattering constantly. Oh, my God, what am I going to do about this and that and that and that? Or what's going to happen next? All these bad things are happening. I just can't, where in the world might happen next? All those places that the ego gets into. We just have to be brave. We have to be braver. I mean, we come here on a mission, and we have to be braver about the situations we get into in life, and we have to trust. We have to go into gratitude and say, thank you in advance that this problem is going to be resolved. And then try to stay in a faithful place about that. Now, we do have to be logical in every way. I mean, we're not talking about giving up on logic and trying to rely on intuition alone. Some people try that. That doesn't work either, because you have to take I'll just give you an example of one that happened to me. This is a very, very practical application. This is not high-level save the world stuff. It's just getting stuff done. I live out in the forest in the south, and my nearest neighbor is a mile away, and we have lots of critters out here. And I need a watchdog, and one of my watchdogs was getting old. I realized that, and this happened not too long ago. And I said, well, I need another watchdog. And the way I usually do that, or have in the past, I have just called all the rescue services and said, what kind of dog do you have? Do you have good personalities? What do you think? And go through that process. And sometimes you get the right dog, and sometimes you don't. But this particular time, and this was during the writing of the book, and it came as a kind of demonstration, I believe. And woke up in the morning thinking, I got to get going on finding a dog. Just wonder how to do that. Well, I had to think about something else and change gears. I had an appointment to worry about, so I took off, got ready and took off on that. But as I just got on entered the main road and was heading to my appointment, it just came to me. I was thinking about what was going to happen in that appointment, but it came to me. I just kind of had an image of going to the local pet shop nearby that sometimes has rescues. And this was a Tuesday, so the ego says, what, it's a Tuesday. They're not going to have a rescue dog on, check back Saturday. And then my ego said, besides that, you're late. You're going to be too late if you stop by there. But then I asked the question, which I think, and I talk about this in the book, I think people are asking, and that is, why did I think that now? Why did that just pop into my mind? It happens all the time. We wake up, we think of an old friend we haven't thought about in years, and we go, wow. Well, all of us know if we pick up the phone right then, what we hear is, I was just thinking about you. Sometimes it's a great conversation with great synchronicities when we follow that intuition. Well, that's what I thought. I said, why did I think about going to that particular place to look for a dog right now when I'm hurrying to an appointment? Well, you know, I cruised through there. I walked in, looked to the right, and there was this beautiful lab mix who is, that afternoon was our dog Ginger, our new watchdog. So instead of spending, 2 weekends trying to go to everywhere finding the best dog, I just listened. That's the way life is supposed to go. That's the way, we have solutions that come to us, and we just say, well, no, that couldn't be right, and we don't test them out. And as you said, people hear that and they don't follow.
James, we need to go to a quick break, so let's talk about karma when we get back. I'm Dr. Rita Louise. We're talking to James Redfield about his new book, The 12th Insight, and we'll be back after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.